BetMGM right now has all these markets, and a lot of these books have these markets too. Who's going to have the most passing yards wildcard weekend, most rushing yards, most receiving yards, all that stuff. You can do wildcard weekend or you can do the whole postseason. BetMGM just dropped these Thursday morning. We, of course, bet last night because we didn't want to wait. So they have for most rushing yards, LamarJackson is 50-1. Josh Allen is 80-1. So a smidge better than what we got at 47 and 74, 75, you said?
75.
Okay.
Yeah, 75.
So the first book that came up last night, and I want to give full credit to Andy and Drew on the deep dive. I'm watching their live show last night, and Drew's talking about this market specifically. Who will have the most rushing yards this weekend? And he says the quarterbacks always have the most value because you think about it, the books are going to put running backs on top. Naturally, they touch the ball the most in the backfield, and they're likely going to run for the most yards. So you look at the board, Barkley, Henry, Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, Aaron Jones, James Cook, Brian Robinson Jr. It's a lot of running backs on top, understandably. But Dinsick was talking about how these guys like Allen and Lamar, in the playoffs, they take off more. They run more because the games mean more, the moments are bigger, and they're more prone to leaving the pocket. You also have two pretty good running backs in Derrick Henry and James Cook that defenses commit to, and if the quarterback keeps it, he could run for 50 yards. So I'm sitting there going, and he's talking about Bo Nix at 100-1. He's talking about that, and I'm thinking, no, wait a minute. Where's Lamar and where's Josh Allen? And the first book that we saw last night had Lamar at 30 and Allen at 50. And I'm like calling people in Illinois. I'm like, hey, we got to bet this. You know, who's got money in their accounts? Blah, blah, blah. Let's bet this. As we're about to bet it, two more books come out. And I'm not going to name names because we are a BetMGM show. But the market on Lamar is this rangy to be the rushing leader this weekend. 30-1, 35-1, 47-1, 50-1. Where are you going? MGM has a 50-1. And then on Allen, here's the range on Allen to be the rush leader. 50-1, 65-1, 75-1, and BetMGM now has an 80-1. Get the best numbers, boys and girls.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so I see the playoff ones on BetMGM, but in the same area are the wild card weekend ones
On
it's under
MGM?
futures. Yes.
Yeah, I went to NFL and then clicked on the futures tab. You go past the Super Bowl market, past AFC, NFC, Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl outcome, and then you hit wild card specials.
Okay, there you go. So for the entire playoffs, the numbers are not that appetizing. We're talking in that 30-1 range, which I find interesting. I guess it makes sense because we're talking about a 2 and a 3 seed, and it's likely going to come down to those final three teams out of the AFC, seeds 1, 2, and 3, including Buffalo and Baltimore. But yeah, I think those are good looks. So looking at I would rather bet wild card weekend leaders than playoff leaders. Now, a lot of that goes into your handicap of who's going to be there in the very end. And we look at this year, and it is kind of open. If you do playoff leaders, I would feel better about going with some Eagles because we have that strong opinion that they're going to make it out of the NFC. And I look at the AFC as it could be one of three. And I'm not quite sure. Like it could be any of those three. So maybe if you go Eagles, because they're going to play a good amount of games, they don't have a bye, then maybe that would be the route to go.
Yeah, you're definitely looking at a team that could play more games. I wouldn't be looking at any Chiefs or Lions because there's just not the volume. It's a volume game, naturally. Don't mind me. I'm just sidebarring some LamarJackson and Josh Allen game props, game logs. Woo! Lamar had 122 rushing yards against Kansas City week 1. That's what we need. The good thing is about those two this week is that they're both playing for teams that are substantial favorites. I don't envision Buffalo and Baltimore needing to throw their way to a win. You know what I mean? Like they don't need these guys to throw 400 yards. If anything, they run early and often, get ahead, and then run the ball more, and then you commit to the run, and then the quarterback can take off. I mean, a 50-yard touchdown run for Lamar or Josh Allen against defenses that are going to commit to stop the run, that's what we need. And to your point, I like the wild card much more than the playoffs because it's a one shot.
Yep.
You take one shot and you need one thing, not, 3 series of things. It's a lot more attainable and the price is better. And again, 80-1. I mean, look, it's more likely to be Lamar. We know that. Lamar's a better runner. He gets more yards per volume. Allen's best game this year, 82 yards. He had 68 against Detroit, 55 against Kansas City. Lamar had a $122 Kansas City, and then 87, 87, 79. That explains why Lamar is 50 and Allen is 80 at BetMGM. But man, the potential is there. And you make a $100 bet at 80-1, and you see that payout, it moves a little bit.
I know, man. I'm like, all right, let's go. How do we get Saquon, James Cook, these guys not to go off? And you want those games to be, I think, a little competitive for these bets, because if they're up by a few scores in the fourth quarter, they're not going to call design runs. Like, why put those guys in harm's way? They're everything for their seasons. So it's a tricky balance, but I think you're right. You don't want to bet to die because a team got upset in the divisional round. And that's what it would do. It would just die. And then maybe there are other opportunities in future weeks where we could come in on those same players and maybe get better numbers, possibly. It's interesting. But yeah, the wild card weekend specials, I like that. Good conversations. Okay, let me throw some at you, and we can see if we can come up with a little bit of value. I do want to see if these numbers have moved at all from last night. No, Lamar's still 47. I still see Allen 75, where we had it available last night. Interesting. Okay, when I say highest scoring team this weekend, first team that comes to mind.
Buffalo.
Yeah, they're the favorite. Highest scoring game.
Commanders Bucks.
Yeah, that does have the highest total, so they are the favorite at plus 260. I was looking at a sneaky shootout, and it's a total that's in the middle of wild card weekend. Do you think Green Bay Philadelphia has the potential to be the highest scoring game of the weekend? That is plus 460.
Sure. I wasn't looking at the market. I was just guessing on who the favorites would be. I mean, what about Minnesota and the Rams? That's a higher total. It's 48. I could see, I mean, depending on where that game is played, especially if they move it to a dome in Arizona, because SoFi is kind of a dome. I mean, would you consider SoFi a dome? It's open, isn't it?
I would, but
I don't.
Well, it's definitely not going to be open if they play there, but I don't think they're going to play there. I think it's going to be in Glendale.
Right. Which it would be better. I mean, Stafford and Darnold and all the weapons at receiver. Yeah, I mean, look, any of these games could be track meets. I think those markets are a lot like these weekly leader markets. You're rolling dice. You want to bet good prices.
Yeah.
I'm not saying bet Washington, Tampa. That's just the first game that came to mind because I think of, all the back and forth and the lack of defense, because those defenses are nothing special and the offenses are high level. But in any of these markets, I don't like the favorites. I would rather bet, Buffalo over the team total than bet Buffalo to be the highest scoring team. So I look at these markets and think, where's the math off? And in my opinion, the math is off on Lamar and Allen in those rushing numbers. You think there's a number that's off? You bet it. And clearly you think Green Bay Philly is a little off. You said, 5-1 to be the highest scoring game?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that has the potential with those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Or those offensive weapons. We've stated multiple times that we think the biggest blowout is going to be Buffalo. If you believe that, that's a 3-1. That game is the biggest blowout and makes sense. It's one of the two highest point spreads of the weekend. I was surprised that Sam Darnold is the favorite for passing leader this weekend.
Really?
That it's plus 380, and then the next guy is plus 800 for Baker and Jaden Daniels. That surprised me a little bit. That
Baker
good or
would be
bad
my
for
bet.
Minnesota? Okay.
Bad. Probably bad. I would not have
Yeah.
guessed that Darnold would be the favorite, especially considering how timid and how hot his throws were in that game against the Lions on Sunday. Whew. That's an interesting one for sure. We got to ask Charch about that one.
Okay. Bo Nix, 11-1 down the board. Maybe chasing? Possibility.
I could see things going really bad for him, though, where he has one of those games where he throws for 102 yards. I'm sorry. I'm not betting Bo Nix anyway this weekend.